Hello and welcome to the Disable the Label podcast. I'm your host, Kerry, and on our podcast we'll be chatting about all things disability, holidays, equipment, therapy, funding, you name it, and we'll talk about it. We want to empower and support parents of disabled children across the UK whilst they navigate their child's life. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. This podcast is sponsored by ABR UK. ABR UK is a unique and highly successful therapy for children with neurological issues and brain injuries. It takes a holistic approach to rebuilding strength, structure and functions of the body. If you'd like to find out more about ABR UK, you can check them out on our app, Disable the Label, available on the App Store or Google Play. On this episode, we have David Smith OBE, who's come to talk about independent living and how he strives to help others live an independent life. Right, let's get into it. Today we have David on the podcast. David, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm really good. Yeah, it's been good. Last couple of months have flown by.
Haven't they just? It feels like I can't believe we're nearly into like another year. Just a bit scary. So I thought I'd let you introduce yourself again. Obviously, David has been on our podcast before. If you haven't check his other podcast out with us. It was very, very good and informative. But David, introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are.
So hi everybody, I am David Smith OBE. I am a Paralympic champion, European and world champion in the sport of boccia. Boccia is a bowls type game for the more physically disabled people in the Paralympics. We don't have a direct Olympic equivalent, and the game is basically like ball or batonk. We play with soft leather balls on an indoor hard surface, I seem to be pretty good at it. So happy days.
Yeah, just a little bit, you know. So we kind of have chatted, and we both wanted to do a podcast on independent living. David has a lot of experience in that, and so we thought it'd be a great subject to chat about. So tell me about when you grew up, how you thought your future independent living wise would look, or whether you were fearful of that or unsure of that, if your parents were unsure. What kind of was that process when you were younger?
Yeah, I guess my story probably starts back in Eastleigh when I was, very young. I went to a school in Southampton called Cedar School. And back at that time, I guess for myself, I wasn't really thinking that far ahead. I was obviously still very young, but it was obviously playing on my parents' mind quite a lot about, how would they be able to look after me when they get older? How would I be able to look after myself? All that sort of stuff. And it was, to be honest, I grew up in the 90s, so it was kind of a case of just suck it and see. There was not a lot of information out there. The information we got wasn't always good. And as disability became more accepted in society, and as things improved, my sort of what became possible for me sort of conveniently unraveled as I got old enough to take advantage of it. I would say. So for me, back then, it was very difficult to envisage me being able to live independently. It was hard enough just to get carers to come in and give my parents some respite. So either to just come in and help me get to bed or get up in the morning. We had nurses coming in, and it was, even that was a challenge. So to have someone, if my parents weren't there and me being able to live independently, it was, I don't think it was even on the radar at that point. It was just trying to get me to school was the first hurdle. So that was kind of that. For me, I guess my independent sort of living journey probably started when I moved away from Cedar School. So at Cedar School, I wasn't really pushed as an individual. My parents felt like I had a lot of potential, and even some of the teachers felt that there was more in me that could be extracted. But they didn't have the time or the facilities to be able to to fulfill my potential. So for example, like I was really good at maths. I think I got that from my grandfather. But I was really, really good at maths. And in that school, it wasn't particularly academic. So when I was 6 or 7, I was in the same maths class as 11 and 12-year-olds, and
Right.
still top of the class. So, so I was getting self-taught in the so one of the maths teachers, Mrs. Murray, her name was, she would take me into her at break times, not because I was in trouble, but just because she felt like I needed a bit more. She would take me into her office at break times, and she would give me like proper maths, not just the sound bites for the others, basically just to get me ready for the SATs. So that was cool. And yeah, that was just an example really of just, some of it just didn't work. It wasn't sustainable. And, it was really obvious that I was outgrowing that place quicker than, And so secondary, it was never a question in my mind that I would be there for secondary school. Like my parents had made a decision when I was about 10 that we needed to get me somewhere else. So the school was fine, but equally also in a sporting point of view, I was never I was told that I was too disabled to play sport. It was quite a insular environment, quite a shoebox of an environment, nice and safe,
kind of,
and not too challenging.
It kind of feels like you come into the school and although they're growing you, it's like you kind of are maintained at the same time, if that makes any sense. Like, this is where he is, and like he's not gonna be able to do this, and this, rather than go like, well, I'll just try anything, like see how it goes. If you succeed, bonus. If you don't, well, you'll find something else. But so it's very like a line rather than kind of working towards something, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And when so we looked at different schools. So, I mean, secondary school, my options were King's School, which was in Winchester, which was a really quite a prestigious school, had a good reputation for developing excellence and education, all that sort of stuff. It was really up there. And the other was Trelaws, another special school, but again, it was boarding, and it looked like it would have all the opportunities for me to have like physio, OT, and all that stuff on tap.
Yeah.
So I went to King's School and immediately felt underwhelmed by it all. Immediately kind of didn't want, I just didn't feel like, it was almost like they didn't really take my needs into account. It was like, well, we'll just, we'll shove you in a classroom and we'll make you be a brilliant, we'll make sure you're brilliant at maths and physics, but we're not going to give you any social activity. So that didn't appeal very much. And then I went to Trelaws, and it was basically like a cross between St. Trinian's and Hogwarts for disabled kids. I felt like Harry Potter going into Hogwarts, like for the first time, just like, crap, I want to be here. Like, this is the,
yes, I'm in the right place.
So that was kind of that really, and then it wasn't on the cards until like in the summer. My basically we were told by social services that it was not going to happen. So basically, my mum kicked up a massive fuss, put it in the papers, made a big stink over it, and my social worker at the time was like, "It won't be any good for you," blah blah blah, all that rubbish, and then basically trying to save money, and then it got me in. My mum put it in the papers. It all went media viral in Eastleigh, and then basically got me in that way. And then obviously every year after that in the reviews, I was listing off all the things I was doing, and then asking the social worker, "Say, do you still think it's a bad idea that I came here?" And then he would sort of shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Oh well, so do you still think it's a bad idea? So do you still think it's a bad idea? I'm British champion now. Do you still think it's a bad idea?" So yeah, I think I always want to keep asking him every year, "Do you still think it's a bad idea?"
I bet he's like, "Oh God, I wish I hadn't said that."
Yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, so yeah, I love being right. So that's kind of that's my thing. But yeah, so obviously Trelaws just gave me all the opportunities in the world that I could have ever wanted in terms of obviously sport, not just bocce, music, drama. I was surrounded by people that were better than me in many different areas, so that was a challenge, which was good. The staff were brilliant as well. They didn't suffer any falls. So again, there was that challenge, and there was always that always that push to be better. And yeah, it was just a great place, and I found my thing in boccia, and I enjoyed doing everything else as well. My schedule became rather hectic very quickly, and I've been busy ever since.
Nice.
And I've just learned to say yes to everything, because one of the first things that I did at Trelaws was say no to something. And I instantly regretted it, because there was an opportunity to go and see Tomb Raider filming, the Lara Croft. And I was one of the, and most of my class said yes, and I said no, because I'd only just moved to Trelaws, and I felt like I wanted to get a feel for the place first before I go off and do these crazy things. And yeah, all my mates came back and told me what an idiot I was, and how good-looking Lara, Angelina Jolie was, and what a fool I was for not to have gone, all that sort of stuff. So I made a decision at that point that I would say yes to everything, which does have consequences, but yeah. Mostly positive. So yeah, that was kind of my induction into Trelaws.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then independent living just sort of came off of the back of that. Really, it was just, again, we were, we were given opportunities. Even I remember, even at school, taught how to, we would do trips. We'd get on the train from Alton, go to Woking, and then look at the train journeys, and stuff like booking in advance, stuff like how many chairs you can get on a train. I'm trying to break that rule as often as possible. How many, the double back to Southampton, the transfer from Waterloo to St Pancras, and all that sort of stuff. So travelling became part of it, and just looking outside. We'd go into Alton every weekend to shop, or they'd take us to Guildford to watch the ice hockey, or we'd go into Basingstoke to the cinema, or it was just, there was always something going on. That wasn't necessarily always about education, which was cool. And that was an education in itself. And then obviously stuff about independent living, cooking, managing care, all that sort of stuff became part of because obviously there were carers there all the time. Part of the lessons where you subconsciously you were starting to do it, because they would ask you, when do you want us? You need to, there was a certain number of carers and more students. So, to do things, you needed to either book or plan and that sort of stuff. So, and it was always our responsibility to do all that. So, that was quite cool as well. Like we had to book stuff, and we had to think ahead, and even like we used to organise our own sporting tournaments, and we used to do our own, so we used to do wheelchair hockey, which is very similar to wheelchair rugby league at the moment. I love it. It's great. I haven't seen a sport as aggressive as our sports at school until now. So happy days. Seeing chairs come back together and a nice reassuring bang is great. It reminds me of the past. So yeah, loving that. But no, so that sort of stuff, organising it. We had volunteers at the school and college who were sort of on their sort of gap years, and they were either doing sporting degrees or just trying to volunteer as part of their CV. And the students would have the opportunity to organise with them, to set up the competitions and to do the weekly events. So we'd have a game called Chairball on a Wednesday, which was basically like murder ball but rougher, and then we'd have wheelchair hockey on a Thursday, which was rougher still, and then it was just and then we'd organise like competitions between the school and college, and
It kind of sounds like what I found, obviously my experience of kids with disabilities, a lot of the time what happens is people tell them what they need to do next and say, right, we need to go to the toilet, or we need to go and have some lunch, or we need to go to the food hall, or whatever it might be, rather than waiting for them to say, like, I only need the toilet. Like, even like simplest of things, and I've tried to encourage this in all the kids that I used to work with, was I used to say, are you hot, are you cold, every time like I would go into the session. Aren't you hot? And then someone would be like, yeah. Well, why didn't you ask someone to take your jumper off? Like, that's a very small thing, but that gives you, like, that's part of your independence, isn't it? So in a way, it sounds like Trelaws kind of starts to do that slowly, and so it's kind of just like happens, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have break times. So we'd have break times between like 10:30, 11, and then we'd have a break time in the afternoon in between lessons. And we had as you know, in our set, we had the choice of whether we went back to the house or not. So because we'd unlocked all the computers, because we were pretty good at IT and we were able to beat the system, essentially we would, which was against the rules, but we did it anyway. And then we. Obviously, and then so we would stay in the class and play video games, like because we had all the computers in the classroom. So, like, you know, whether we went back or not was our own. You know, the staff wouldn't come chasing after us. Hey, you got to go back. They would be like, whatever. Like, do what you want. If you need a piss, you need a piss. Like,
yeah, totally.
You know, and if you have to go out of lessons and do it, then you'll get told off, and you'll. It's like whatever you put a rod for your own back kind of thing. So
100%.
And they'd have but equally, like, if you wanted to get a drink, there was a water cooler in the reception. So I would I would just go down there and grab myself a water because I could. And again, it was fine. The staff didn't molly-polly and go, they were wise enough just to let us get on with it.
Yeah, which I think that's a massive part of it, really, to be able for you to learn independence and want it, really, because I remember working with a few kids that I'd be like, don't you want to learn like how to brush your teeth, or like, and these were kids that could do these things. Sometimes I'd get the response, no, mum and dad will do it, or no, like their carer will do it, and I was like, don't you want to do it? Don't you want to be in control of that? Like, I know I definitely would, like. But it wasn't the fact that they didn't, it was the fact that they hadn't ever been let, so they didn't really know that was possible, if that makes any sense.
A choice. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, for us, physio we had always had physio available to us. But again, at Trelaws, it was physio by consent. It was the first time I'd ever seen physio by consent, rather than physio torture that I'd had at Cedar School. So for me, it was nice to be able to go, some days I'd go in and they're like, do you want anything? You've got half an hour session. What do you want? And sometimes I don't really want anything. I'm like, all right, sod off then. Like, yeah. Great, I will. No problem. Or they would go, look, we've got this. Do you want to try that? Or they, sometimes the physicians were clever and go, actually, do you really want to go back to lessons, or do you want to have the extra half hour off? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good way of selling it.
Yeah. Love it.
But it was always a negotiation. It was always a bartering. How much do you want stretching? Do you want your hamstrings stretched? Well, not really, because I don't like my hamstrings being touched. but they are a bit tight. Okay, well, we'll sit you on the bed, just do the transfers, or teach you how to transfer yourself, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So, when you then became like a young adult, what were your key pointers for living independently?
I think the thing for me was I knew when I left Trelaws that I wouldn't have everything available to me, but I was pretty. I'd had discussions with different carers and different people that I trusted within Trelaws system about the future, and it we all agreed that I probably would need to live in carers, because of how busy I was. Like, if I wanted to do the things I wanted to do, I needed to have that flexibility, rather than relying on someone to come in every 2 hours or whatever. So we did pretty much agree that that's what I needed to do, and then we also agreed how I would get it. How to answer the questions that are required by local government, to get the funding that I needed. So those are the conversations really we had about what to say, what not to say, and then look at that, and also emphasizing the busyness and being active in society and all that sort of stuff, all the words that social services love to hear, because you're more, if you can pander to that, you're more likely to get what you want.
100%. Like, wording is key. If you kind of, I'm not saying that you have to necessarily milk what you need or whatever, but if you're not very precise and clear cut in exactly what you need, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, like, I know David. Like,
Yeah, have this. I'll have this, have that. Yeah. Oh, why
It's
don't we put a bottle of champagne in it? Well, we can afford that. We'll give you a bottle of champagne as a starter as well. Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, no. So you ask for everything possibly that you need and want, and then, you just work as hard as you can to get it as close to that or kind of negotiate in some
compromise
ways. But
along
wording
the way
is key. Yeah.
So I'd already planned that. I mean, I actually spent a year at Trelaw, so I was getting pretty good at working the system. So I finished my college studies a year before I went to the Paralympics in Beijing. In terms, I got my 2 A levels I wanted, and then we had a discussion with Trelaws again, and I said, and we with my friends and people around, we were like, actually, do you want to? So it wasn't necessarily the top dogs, but it was carers that I trusted and my colleagues, shall we say, student colleagues. And I was like, you know what? They're like, why don't you stay another year? And I'm like, well, because I've got everything I need. I've got all my degree. I could, I can graduate now and go to the uni. And they're like, well, if you spend another year here, you can actually then plan the whole care package for when you go to uni. And I was like, that's a good shout. And then I kind of figured, how do I do that? And so then how do I get the local authority to cough up a bit more cash for me to have another year at Trelaws? So I went down the whole route of, I need to do this. And so I did an AS level in further maths. And I said, well, I'm interested in PE now because of my boccia career. I wasn't. And then, so I did an AS PE. But basically that year was a piss up and an opportunity to get my care sorted, which was great. And it was probably the best. It was a nice year because I was actually able to say, so that was a year that a lot of my close friends started passing away because they'd hit the threshold for muscular dystrophy. So it was quite nice to spend that year just getting drunk with them because they didn't have long left essentially. So yeah, that was
Yeah, so
pretty rough, but
that's a really hard thing to go through, especially even then. But it's nice that you had that opportunity, isn't it? Like, and being prepared as well at the same time, like, because when you're trying to do everything that you want to do and plan what you're going to go study at uni, etc., you kind of, how can you possibly think of all your care package as well? You kind of had a lot of bonuses in the fact that you took that extra year, not only to get the care package that you needed for uni, but also to be able to spend time with those friends that, you didn't know who had however long left. So was there anything that you were like completely against that you might have really needed? I don't know. Like it's kind of an interesting one.
I think I'm the sort of person that if I was totally against it, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I thought as much.
I'm pretty good at manipulating the situation to get what I want. I'm a manipulator. That's what I do. I'm good at bringing people with me. I'm good at, pandering to what the rules are, but also bending them and pushing them as much as possible. If I didn't want it, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I thought that might be the case, but you never know. So tell me, you obviously said that you kind of needed a living carer. That was like one of your key things. What other key things did you want to either like learn, I don't know, like driving, to become even more independent than you already were becoming, I suppose? Like,
well, driving was always on my agenda of things I wanted to do. Not for independence, just for my love of engineering, and I wanted to be a pilot, and driving was the next one down. In my opinion. So it was a stepping stone. It's not, so driving was always on the agenda. Like, it was never, it was just it's a passion of mine. So that was nothing to do with independence. That was because I wanted to do it. And the independence is just a byproduct of me wanting to do that. But I was never going to be chauffeur driven. Because people driving me just does my nut in, because I either shift gears too early, too late, don't accelerate hard enough, brake too early, don't get the most out of the engine, all that crap. Put the wrong fuel in, don't pump the tyres up, aren't fuel efficient. Missed. Like even just stupid things. Like, come on, I could do that in my sleep. So
you sound like
as soon
me
as I
when I
pass my
drive.
test, So as soon as I passed my test, my car became mine. It was never a question. I was never going to be chauffeur. I was a terrible backseat driver when I was like 19, 20, because the frustration of these idiots driving my car was just, I couldn't.
Yeah. Love that. That's too
I've got
funny.
better. Actually, now I've learned to now I've learned to drive, and I do drive. It actually made me a much better passenger, because I can smugly sit there going, I'm a better driver than you, but I don't have to say it. So that was kind of, so actually me learning to drive has mellowed me a little bit as well. So it's a pacifier.
Any other key things then, other than driving, which was just kind of actually for the pure joy of it, which is nice to hear?
Not really. Again, like the independent stuff that it was all part of byproduct of stuff I wanted to do. So, I came to uni to study aerospace engineering. I wanted to get my own job, and I wanted to, live independently, have my own place, start earning a decent income, and then hopefully upskill and be able to give my parents a happy, healthy retirement, and all that stuff, and then have a family, and live the good life, all that, and then have my own mansion, have an airfield in it, so I could get my own plane, adapt it so that I could fly it.
The dream was real.
All that, and then create an engineering company that I would then manage. We would come up with our own solutions. I wouldn't have a boss telling me what I needed to come up with. All that sort of stuff. I hate being told what to do. So it's I have to be boss. Of the stuff that I'm passionate about, I have to be the boss.
Okay, so what were the things that were the game changers in you, I suppose, accessing that life? Obviously you've said about Trelaws. Now, I obviously know about Trelaws. Did you spend some time like living on your own? I know they used to do like have your own flat for however long.
That's a funny story. So that was during my third year. That was a conversation. That was one other conversation that came up. So I had because I applied for my own independent flats. I put my name in the hat and said, go on. I might as well do that, because I knew I could. So, but essentially they actually told me, look, Dave, with the best will in the world, we think you're already too independent for them. You don't need it. Like those flats are to help people that aren't independent become independent. But like we know you can do that. You can do that. There's nothing to be gained from us giving you that for a year, when there are other students here that actually need to use it. And it's like if you want more independence, just speak to the guys in Gloucester House. I'm like, they're like, we know they give you a free rein anyway to do whatever you pretty much want. They said. The weekend before, I'd gone on a trip to Leicester on a train on my own to see a girl. So, that was, literally just got on the train, transferred, did the assistance, and then the assistance guy was like, so how long, so we're going to put you on this train. I think it was like, I got in London at like 10:30, and they were going to put me on 11:30 to Leicester from St Pancras. And I was like, why can't you do the one half an hour earlier? And they're like, well, because you've got to get across London. And I'm like, trust me, I can do it in 17 and a half minutes. They were like, how? And I'm like, well, my chair does 12 miles an hour. Do the maths. They're like, but traffic. And I'm like, sod the traffic. I use the pavements. And they're like, okay, well, I was like, you book it, I'll be there. And I think the guy on the phone was shocked, like, what? Nuts. And they're like, do you want a taxi? No, I'm faster than taxis. Do you want to get on the
yeah.
tube? No, I can't. They're not accessible.
Yeah.
So how are you going to do it? I'm going to walk across. What do you think? Like,
And it's quite funny because I think actually potentially your attitude and the way that you kind of just hold yourself helped you become independent, because you kind of already had the attitude of like, this is like in Cedar School, this isn't enough for me, like I kind of want some more, like I'm a bit bored. And and then even being given the ability to be more independent at Trelaws, then kind of spiraled, obviously, clearly, because you didn't need all these things. And you are right that the flats kind of are for those people that are kind of teetering on the edge between, they really want to be independent, but they're really unsure
but they don't know how necessarily.
Yeah, how that's going to look for them or feel or be like. You're clearly very clear cut in the sense of like, I'm going to do this if I want to live by myself. Like, I'm going to make it happen. So,
exactly. And it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people that I was friends with that we were all incredibly independent. Like, we'd go out together at nights. We'd rigged a system because they'd only let a certain number of students out to, because of the night staff could only do so much to get us to bed. Mm-hmm. So we'd kind of rigged a system. So for example, on the night out, because some of them would need assistance, they'd make sure that I was with them because I was a bit more able. So I'd feed them, I'd drive them home if they were a bit tipsy, because I wasn't allowed to get too drunk. That sort of stuff, and they knew I couldn't handle my drink as well as they could. So and they knew that I would be, I would stay relatively sober. So again, it was, those sort of plans were done like almost like we didn't even think about it. It was like, yeah, right, you're coming, okay, yeah.
Okay then. So, what advice then would you give to others that are seeking to like be more independent and even feel more independent? I think that's links to it.
I think it's an attitude. The more I spend time, so obviously, so I work now. I'm working as a nutrition coach with Herbalife Nutrition, and I've started seeing the other side a little bit now because I want to be. A long time I've spent my time with my head down, focusing on myself and doing everything I can to be whatever I want to be and sod everybody else, essentially. I realized, and it got lonely. So during lockdown, it got quite lonely, and I'd basically whipped the horse, and the horse had bolted, and I was just knackered. I was absolutely I was done. The lockdown came at the right time for me, and basically I was able to sort of reset and go, actually, what do you want from life? And frankly, it wasn't what I'd given myself. So there was, a bit of reflection, and came back, and then I started. Obviously, I learned. I've been looking for a career for a while, and this one sort of fell onto my lap. So happy days. But a lot of the lessons I've learned along the way, listening to sort of motivational speakers and listening to other people, is like there isn't like success leaves clues, and it's no surprise that the most successful people all tend to do similar things. They all tend to be a similar way. They all tend to have a similar outlook, philosophy, way with people, inspiring leadership, that sort of stuff. And I realized that I was missing a few areas. And the main one is actually how I bring people with me, how I communicate, and my attitude, my mental attitude. And I think for independence, there is also a mental block. And the people that I work with, or looking to try and help, don't always want the help, or don't always believe that if I gave them the help, that they could improve by as much as I can see them improving. And again, it's, if you don't believe it in yourself, then it's never going to happen. Like no matter how much someone tries to pull you along, you're never going to get to the point that you want to be at. So,
100%.
Leadership's not about pulling people; it's about guiding and being signposts and letting them find their own way. But also being that person to talk to and have conversations with, like the people that I had at Trelaws, who were able to sit down with me and go, who asked me genuine questions like, what do you want? How are you going to do this? Or I would go to them and go, look, I trust you. What do I need to do here? And they would ask me what I wanted, and then that would come up with a solution based on that. And again, it's that approach in life in general, collaboration with people that who have different skills and different attributes is really important. But from a independence point of view, you need to believe in it yourself. You're never going to be independent if you don't think you can be independent, or if you're satisfied, or if you're comfortable being looked after, or if and I'm going to hold my hands up. I really have no problem asking my carers to make drinks for me when I can probably make them myself with a bit of effort, but actually it saves me 5 minutes for them to do it. I have no problem taking that approach, but I make that approach as a conscious decision because my time is important to me. It's not because it's not because I'm lazy and I want, and I'm sort of like the king of the house and acting like the Emperor's New Groove and just sort of give it to me. I am the king. It's more about it's more that actually, I've got a vision far beyond where I am at the moment. So if I can save 5 minutes here and there to do more things, then I will take that. But
it's about,
again,
knowing what
people need to have that. Yeah, people need to have that vision to achieve it. So my advice is, if you want to become independent, think like an independent person.
Yeah, 100%. So what advice would you give then to parents? Because obviously that is a massive thing. A lot of parents are worried, thinking about it, etc. Any advice that you can give to them?
Have you ever seen that? Yeah, have you ever seen that film Frozen? Was it Let It Go, Let It Go? That one. Yeah, for me it's Let It Go. So I do struggle with parents because I'm very much a go bye bye sort of guy. So my parents, so my mum particularly made the ultimate sacrifice when she was, because she was very, very close to me, like she very protective of me. But she knew that where we were at the time wasn't suitable, and she wanted the best. She wanted me to have the most, the best opportunities and the most social activity I possibly could. So she fought really hard to get me into Trelaws. The problem was, when she got me into Trelaws, I was gone. And didn't really look back, if I'm honest. Didn't look back. Just totally head down, go.
See ya.
So yeah, I was gone. It was bye-bye.
It's like one of those when you first drop your child off. I don't know, I don't have kids, but I've seen when you first drop your child off to nursery, and they're like, "Yeah, don't give a crap. See you later." Yeah. And they're like, bye-bye. The parents "Oh, they're not sad to leave."
It's a bit like those films, you got like a superhero with super speed, and they just you drop them off and gone. And there's like a little bit of dust, a cloud of dust, and that's about it. Yeah, so that's probably how my mum felt. And and that's the problem. But for me, it's like, if she hadn't have done that, then I wouldn't have gone to I wouldn't have been in Beijing. I wouldn't have been able to travel the world. I wouldn't have achieved all the things I did with the sport. But equally, I wouldn't have been able to give some of the things back. So I wouldn't have been able to take her and Dad to Buckingham Palace to pick up my MBE. So, what goes around comes around eventually. But you've got to be, but as parents, you've got to be patient, and you've got to let it go, because sometimes the devil is in what you don't do, and sometimes as parents you can actually be your own worst enemy, because you love the person so much that you don't allow them to develop as individuals. Mm-hmm. And the harsh reality is, you're probably going to die before your child does. And when you're gone, are they going to be able to stand on their own 2 feet? Well, I mean, I can't ever stand, but you know what I mean? Are they ever going to be able to do what they do? And without you. And if the answer is no, then you're probably doing them a disservice.
Yeah, and I think that's giving them that opportunity both emotionally and physically, because kids do wrong, whether you're disabled or not. They do things wrong. Tell them off. That they're going to learn from that. Yeah. It's going to be every single day is a learning experience, and giving them the opportunities to learn how to ask for the right things. Like, just don't put their dinner down and don't give them the knife and fork. Are they going to ask for it? Or don't start feeding them? Are they going to ask to, for you to feed them? Like, and give them the opportunity. Like, for me, I've seen parents, and I feel the same way as you do. I struggle sometimes giving parents this advice, because I understand it's love. It's coming from a loving place that they're doing these things. But there's no reason why some of these kids can't live independently with support and extra help. And that would mean that you would feel okay at that point in your life where you know you're not going to be here anymore, rather than be worrying about that for the rest of your life, because actually doing too much is going to make that point difficult.
Yeah, but that's a harsh reality, isn't it? That the reason why parents worry about their kids not being able to is because it's the very reason why they're not letting them branch out and be their own individuals. It's a vicious cycle, and it a lot of the issues. It's the people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Analogy is quite a good one. Like you've got to be, the issue probably isn't with the children; it's probably with the parents. It's your perceptions, your reality. I had a conversation with someone on Facebook the other day, and she was very worried about the future of her child, and she was concerned because her financial situation didn't allow her to give the child everything that they could possibly want. And I said, well, sometimes you removing a barrier, you get rid of the determination.
Yeah.
People. If the barriers aren't there, the determination might not be there either to overcome.
Yeah.
And you can't get rid of the fact of life is there are going to be barriers in the way, regardless of whether you're disabled or not. So you either learn to overcome barriers or you die, like live in a box for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And it's the same. Like, life is hard, whether you're disabled or not. Life is hard. Life throws you curveballs. And if you protect that child or person, they're never going to know how to deal with those things. So if there's any point that you might not be there, whether that's you die or whether that's you're sick in hospital for however long, you don't know what's going to be around the corner. So giving them the opportunity to deal with those curveballs and work through that, it is really key, massively. So yeah, totally agree with you. How can people follow you and, see what you get up to and your like lavish lifestyle?
Well, hopefully my lavish lifestyle's turning down a little bit now because I'm trying to settle down. My girlfriend would be very keen for me to get rid of that. So, but yeah, so we're the best way to follow me is obviously on Instagram, Facebook. I'm around. At Smithy2389 is my Instagram, and sort of at Botcher Smithy's Twitter, and so I'm pretty easily found, I think. So yeah, welcome to follow me. Drop me a message. Any concerns about independence, welcome to have a chat.
David just fell off the podcast. I don't know if he's going to come back on. We were just coming to an end anyway. So thank you, David, because I know you'll probably listen to this back. It was great to chat to you. If you ever want to ask any questions, whether that's to us, you can ask us, email info@disabledlabel.co.uk, or you can always message David if it's anything about independent living. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to the Disable the Label podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment to let us know what you thought of this episode. More episodes will be coming soon, so make sure you tune in. Don't forget you can download our app for free via the App Store. That's Google Play or Apple App Store. Just search Disable the Label and you'll find us.